We're so glad to see you today, and I know some other folks may be coming in. We're glad to be able to participate and share a little bit about our recent mission trip to Poland, and I'm excited that Tom Boone's here with us today from the Outreach Foundation. And we're looking forward to sharing this presentation with you. I did want you to know that it is being recorded as well, and will be on South Highlands YouTube channel. So if there are people who want to follow up with it, that will be great. And Kathryn and I are excited about this, as excited as we can be. At least it's about 10 days after we got back and not 1 or 2. So that's a good thing. So we're going to have a word of prayer and then get going. And appreciate you being here. Dear God, thank you so much for this time that we can share together. We know that you're the God of all of our days, and Lord, as we continue to live our lives and seek to do that which is pleasing in your sight, we know that each day is important. That's why it's called the present. Help us to number our days right, that we may gain a heart of wisdom. And as we consider today what it means to engage with people in other parts of the world, may we have insights that can be helpful not only to us but to others, and especially remembering the people who are there serving you through their ministries. And we offer this prayer now and ask that you would be close to us and with us during this presentation. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, as you can see on the slide, and thank John Heiser for putting this together. It's actually the best looking slide in the presentation. So really appreciate that he did that and gives you, come on in guys. Welcome to the shop group. Come on up front if you want. That would be great. Thank you. I always like to welcome our shop group with us. We're very grateful to the Outreach Foundation, and I had the opportunity, Kathryn and I both, back in 2016 to engage with Tom Boone. He wasn't officially with the Outreach Foundation then, but he was teaching in Lithuania, theology, Dean of Theology at the college there, the Christian College in Lithuania. And so he and Joy had been supported through our outreach program here at the church, and we had met them before, but we hooked up in Ukraine, of all places, back in 2016. So we've become friends since then and kept in touch. And there came this opportunity a couple years ago for me to participate in a lecture series on crisis counseling with a college in Warsaw, Christian College. And then I did 3 lectures and then went there for the graduation. A lot of the students were from Ukraine, and a lot of them were wives of men who were in the military. So that's kind of the background for my participation in Outreach Foundation. And Kathryn's come alongside. We also went to Liverpool a couple years ago with the Outreach Foundation with an Iranian church from the diaspora. Refugees had formed there. It was a great experience. So Tom is Reverend Doctor, and he's Associate Director for Mission. His areas are China, Eastern Europe, the Baltic states, Pakistan, Persian diaspora in Europe, and Ukraine. So you know he's busy, and he's a lot of times on the hop traveling, and had some recent experiences in Ukraine, and also is involved in Turkey with and Germany, lots of places. So I'm going to ask Tom if he will come and tell us a little bit about what we were going to do in Poland. You kind of initiated this, I guess, so thank you for inviting us. Tom Boone, welcoming.
Oh, what a great picture. Isn't this neat? This picture that you see in front of you is toward the end of our visit. We were at a hotel looking forward to getting back home. And the trip was so busy. We, at Outreach Foundation, we used to do these written blogs that every day, if you were on a visit with us, your assignment at the end of the day was to write a blog. And it was incredibly difficult. Can you imagine going through hearing one of the toughest jobs that you have on the Outreach Foundation visit is to listen to stories. And one of the things that we really try to make sure that happen on an Outreach Foundation visit is, number one, you get a good sleep. And that's why we stay at nice hotels where we can. And in Europe, there are plenty of them, rather than bunk beds and other types of hostile environments. And then the second is to have a good breakfast. And the reason we do that is because it's really difficult work. And people ask, what do you do all the time? What did you do? What did you do? Thinking, okay, digging a well or anything. But there's really nothing harder than to try to listen to stories while your brain is adjusting to new languages and really trying to embrace the culture in which you're sitting and trying new food and learning new people. That's difficult work when you really think about it, because what is the hallmark of an Outreach Foundation visit are the relationships. And we carry those relationships with us when we leave. So we didn't have time to do any of the blogs anymore. So we do vlogs, video vlogs. And I just had a chance to sit in this picture showing Larry and Kathryn and me at the end of the visit and just reflecting on the experience from their perspective and how they see God at work. So I hope you were able to see this vlog. If not, it's on our website. They did a great job. So what am I to talk about? Oh, okay. So the genesis of this idea of what the experience, so each visit is a different experience. How many of you have been with the Outreach Foundation on a visit itself? Oh, we've got to get, now you two, raise your hands. Okay, well, we've got to improve that. We've got to improve that, because one of the most impactful things that I've seen happen to people who are over 60 years old is to go on an Outreach Foundation visit. And you say, really? Yeah, really. One of the things that we make sure happens on these visits is that you experience culture much like you would on a cruise. How many of you have been on a cruise? All right, now here we're talking. Okay. So, and one of the delightful things about cruising, especially the river cruises, if you've done river cruises in Europe, is you get a lot of culture, don't you? You know, you kind of go on these excursions and learn about all this stuff. Well, that's an Outreach Foundation visit, and it doesn't cost half as much. And plus, you get to meet all these wonderful people. And when you get to what happens on an Outreach Foundation is, and one reason you see several people in this picture who are over 60 years old is because you bring with you a lot of life experience that our hosts actually like to receive. That's a big gift to the church in other parts of the world, where most of them are only 30 years old at best. The fall of the Soviet Union happened when? 1992, 91. So that's the birth date of the evangelical church in this part of the world. Poland, Eastern Europe, the Baltic states, Ukraine. It's only that old. So think about that. How many generations is 30 years old? It's not many. They don't have deep roots. So they love it when people who are 60 and above, who've got these incredible stories of how God is at work in their lives and their grandkids' lives, even when the children have gone off the rails. Especially when the children have gone off the rails. You know how that is, right? Or our grandchildren, they're like, what is going on with our kids? We didn't raise that. But what we discover is that God's involved. God's in it. He has held us secure. And we can tell that story well. And they need that story. They need to hear how God is faithful across generations, because they don't have it. And that's why we bring people who are more seasoned in life and more mature in their walk with the Lord. So if you look at this picture, this is a typical Outreach Foundation team. You got Larry and Kathryn. My wife is in the middle, and I'm back there. Then next to my wife, Joy, is a woman this was her first Outreach Foundation visit. She's at St. Luke's, works with Larry in grief. Some of you may know her, Sandy. Fabulous person. Next to Sandy is Morgan Fuller, who is married to Bob Fuller, and they are the senior pastor and his couple down in San Antonio, First Presbyterian. It was not their first Outreach Foundation visit, although it was hers. So, and he's on the board. So you can see this, and the guy in the back next to me we're all wearing sunglasses except for Bob. But the guy in the middle is our new associate director responsible for Arabic ministries. And he is leading us into places like North Africa and some other places that we can't talk about because there's incredible growth in the church. So each team is different and a blessed experience. You get to know each other really well, and it's fun. We have a lot of fun on these visits. That's one of the things that I really try to make sure is that you unwind, because when you are doing God's work like you're doing, it is difficult, but it's amazing what happens with the synergy of a team. We met our hosts. This is Dr. Novak, Piotr Novak. He has the privilege to have met the Pope twice, which is highly unusual as a Pentecostal. So he's Pentecostal. He's a seminary president. He is involved in one of the leading global conferences for Christianity, and he's the executive secretary, actually, and he is a great leader, fabulous guy. Kind of on the retiring side of all that, though, as he looks at what are my next steps as he moves out of his position. Next to him is a delightful, savvy businesswoman, Annetta Montano. She lived in the United States for over 20 years. She met her husband in Georgia, Georgia, the U.S., and he's from Bolivia. So imagine that. Come to the United States as a Polish woman, you meet your husband, he's Bolivian, and you marry each other. They are back now. They've been back in Poland since about 2003, 2, somewhere in there. Out of a sense of call to go back. They have an 18-year-old son who's 2 meters tall, and his name is Daniel. But these two people are leading what they call the Novus Foundation. And the Novus Foundation started actually as a response to the war in Ukraine. When Poland was flooded with all these refugees, they were at a college of theology and social sciences located in Warsaw, and they opened the doors of the college to receive many of these women and children and families from eastern Ukraine. Well, that led to very many different things. Among them, Larry was there. They launched a program of counseling, training for trauma counseling. One of the things that you discover is that when you live in that part of the world, one of the themes that you hear is that life is tough, deal with it or die. This is as big as their violin is for you if you have a problem. Deal with it or die. And so they do have counselors. Can you imagine going to a counselor and hearing that? But that they don't have, they do have psychologists there, but by and large, A, they're coming from a non-Christian worldview, and B, they're focused on research and data. It's not chiefly about counseling. So one of the gifts that they ask of us, and they really need during crises, is people like Larry, people like Kathryn to come over, people like Polly that we're talking with, and others who are counselors, who know what it's like to do grief work, and really listen to people because they don't know how to do that well. Some of them do, but by and large not. And so we had an opportunity to bring to a group of pastors, a group of clergy, couples, something that they have never, ever experienced, Sam. Can you imagine this? Many of them have been in ministry for over 20 years, and not once have they ever had a retreat for clergy couples or any kind of input, anyone to pour into their lives. It's all out. And the expectation is if you're clergy there, you're perfect. You're not allowed to have problems. And if you do, and if you show them, you're out. Life is difficult, deal with it, or die. There's a lot of stress in the clergy community in that part of the world. So this was a gift that we had an opportunity to bring out of the Ukrainian war to people who are really serving on the front lines with Ukrainian refugees. They should imagine COVID, then a war, then all these refugees coming in, and you are stressed out and can't show it. It's pretty amazing. So this is the host of that. One of the things that we did is we heard a presentation by Novus Foundation, and the foundation is really got a great vision of beyond counseling, beyond Christian counseling now. It's going to include church planting, training, and holistic mission for its church leaders that come out of this foundation. And its understanding of holistic mission is to focus on counseling. So what it wants to do is produce church planners who have a really keen understanding of how people need to grieve, how people are needing to have help in marriages and things like that. Now for us, that's like, well, what do you mean? But remember, what's the theme? Life is difficult, deal with it, or what? So for them, what they're doing is incredible work. It's countercultural. And we want to get behind what they're doing. So I think I'm done, and I want you to really embrace the job these two did was fabulous. And I can't wait for you to hear their story.
Thank you, Tom, and welcome my dear wife, Kathryn. And the marriage retreat preparation almost survived our marriage. So,
No, our marriage almost survived.
yeah, it's something like that. So we're glad you're here.
Isn't this a fascinating picture? This is the team going to church on Sunday morning. Our hotel bordered on a large park and field, and the church was across the field, so we walked across the field. But I just wanted to use this opportunity to talk with you a little bit about this experience. As most of you probably know, I, before retirement, was a partner in a financial planning and investment management firm. That's what I did. So that's my background. And I heard myself referred to as a kind of a counselor person. And you do a lot of counseling in that business, but you're not really trained for this kind of experience. So I'm telling you this sort of as a testimony, but also because I want to invite you to listen to what God is asking you in your life. And I want you to be open to whatever it might be. Because there's one prayer that will certainly always be answered, and that prayer is, Lord, what would you have me to do? So I've been praying this prayer, and was approached to go with Larry to Poland to lead a retreat, a kind of a spiritual retreat. It involved mountains and lakes and castles, and it sounded like a great idea. So we said, yeah, we'll do that. That sounds good. Somehow, as it unfolded, it became a marriage retreat. And oh my goodness, did that ever change things? But we felt led to do this. We thought, okay, we'll go forward. It's interesting to know that in the group that we worked with, there were 4 psychotherapists. Yeah, see that? There were 4 psychotherapists. Four of the wives were trained psychotherapists. In the original team that had been thinking about going, there was a couple who did marriage retreat as a work, and one other marriage and family counselor who's a friend of ours who'd gone on another retreat with us. So we're looking at this and thinking, wow, what is God trying to say to us here? How are we going to manage this? So we worked and we worked and we thought about it, and then we got some coaching from Annetta, who told us that what this group really needed was some work in conflict resolution. As Tom mentioned, they had been working, they had been serving. This is very hard on marriages, and they needed not only some specific work in the area of conflict resolution, but also time away. So what we did as a team was to try and give them this time away and to give them some specific input in terms of how they could use conflict in a marriage in a positive way. We think of conflict sometimes as negative, but Larry and I wanted to say, no, conflict doesn't have to be negative. It can be very, very positive. We can use conflict to grow our marriage, and we can use conflict to glorify our God. He uses conflict in our lives sometimes like sandpaper to rub us down a little bit when we get a little bit too sharp and pricky. We need to recognize that and be grateful for that. And we also need to learn that he has created us male and female different, and he did it on purpose. It wasn't some cosmic mistake. He did this on purpose. So I don't know how to advance this thing. How do we do this?
Spacebar.
Okay. Yeah. Here's the team at dinner, and as Tom said, we don't travel as paupers. We enjoy ourselves. We in our off time, we really have a good time. So here we are at dinner in our hotel with the team and all of our participants. I'm going to refer to these pictures in just a minute, but this is Larry and Kathryn working on the marriage retreat.
Can you go back? Go back.
Which do I do?
Well, to show the distinctions, of course.
This is an example of how God created us different, okay? Larry prepares his material at the last minute. Kathryn prepares her material way in advance. So I'm trying to fit myself into Larry's method of preparation here. So this is Larry's preparation, and I'll talk about this in just a minute. This is Kathryn's preparation. I'll give some more detail on this in just a minute. Our first session, this is a picture of the group together. We sang together, we worshiped together. We had a wonderful time. And these times were important to the group in terms of bonding with each other. They didn't know each other. We thought they did, but they didn't. They didn't know each other. And we had a really we had two great musicians, and we had a really good time. We had couple time, and we had sharing time. One of the things we did was to ask each couple to introduce the other person to the group, and to do it in a positive way. And this is Tom and Joy having a good time sharing. This is one of the resources that we use. You know those pictures that I mentioned just a few minutes ago? Keep those in mind. There's a book written by Bill and Pam Farrell, and the book is called Men Are Like Waffles, Women Are Like Spaghetti. And it has to do with the way that we experience our world and the way that we process information. And the result of it is that a lot of times we miscommunicate. And because we miscommunicate, we experience friction and we experience some stress. So it's important for us to understand that God created us different and that we need to celebrate those differences. Well, men are compared to waffles in that men like to solve problems. They like to deal with one issue at a time. They like to look at it, examine it, come to a determination of how it should be handled, put it in a box, put a lid on it, nail it down, and be done. Go on to the next problem. Perfect? Perfect, yeah. Women, on the other hand, if you can imagine a plate of spaghetti, you follow a noodle around the plate, it intersects with a lot of other noodles, doesn't it? And it crosses over, and you may even hop from one noodle to another noodle if you're following this around the plate. Women tend to process information very much differently. Women are interrelational. Women like to get consensus. Women are concerned about how people feel and how they relate. They are not particularly, in a lot of cases, worried about solving a problem. They come to consensus and agreement going forward. So you might see how this, and there are a lot of other dimensions of these particular aspects, but you might see how this is kind of a problem if a woman is experiencing stress and wanting to talk. You know, that's what we do when we are stressed. We like to talk. We don't necessarily want somebody to solve a problem for us. We just want them to listen. So in an interpersonal relationship where a woman is expressing herself and talking and trying to relate and pull all these different aspects together to make sense of an issue, a man is impatient and wondering why she's not getting to the point and where is she wandering all over the place, and can't we just settle this thing and be done with it? And so you can see how that might cause a little friction. Maybe you've experienced this in your relationships. I don't know. Men are like waffles. Women are like spaghetti. Session 2 had to do with listening, how important that was. The single most important communication skill is taking turns. Women, and we talked with the group about how women very often are the ones to bring up sensitive issues, aren't we? We typically are the ones that say, hey, there's something we need to talk about. Session 3 was using conflict to enrich the marriage, and we had a number of different techniques that we presented. We also asked them to meditate on scripture. We just built in a lot of different experiences into this retreat to help people unwind, relax, and be able to relate. Your turn.
Isn't she great? I mean, I'm the luckiest man in the world, and I admit it openly without shame. So thank you, Kathryn, for that. You know, when it comes to conflict, you know, churches sometimes get embroiled in conflicts that are great, and some are not so great. And, you know, I remember hearing churches talk about the fact that they couldn't decide which side of the church to put the piano on. So in this cartoon, which is one of my favorites, a tornado just came through and took out half of the church. And these two ladies standing in front said, well, I suppose that solves the problem of which side the piano goes on. So, sometimes God does intervene miraculously to help bring resolution. But, in the marriage relationship, I think this is true in life, that love does cover over a multitude of sins. We talk about forgiveness, we talk about reconciliation, but in this retreat, we talked a lot about steps that need to be taken in how an issue comes up, like we saw, we need to talk. And of course, one thing that statistically is that men interrupt 75% of the time. But you know why? We can't get a word in edgewise. Just kidding. So, but there definitely are differences. We know that, don't we? But I think that's the beautiful thing about how God, brings couples together. In that first session, we talked about God's foundation of marriage, husband and wife, and that we were created differently. And different is good. It's not bad, it's good. And I think that part of the process is learning how to appreciate the differences rather than seeing the differences as a detriment. Something that you have to overcome, like, well, I'm going to change that person. I mean, how many people sometimes get into a relationship or marriage thinking they're going to change the other person? And yet there are some things perhaps that need to be changed. We understand that. So the idea of conflict, and I've tried to tell churches this over the years as a pastor, that conflict is it happens. And it's not bad necessarily. It's just something you have to work through. It's part of being human. And we work through our problems and we get to the other side, hopefully, in a better place. So as we moved through, we split up with the men and the women. And that was really good because the men went outside on a patio and we talked about specific things about how we could communicate better, how we could go through the steps of not just introducing but responding, and soft approaches at the beginning if you've got an issue, not just, men are really good about making pronouncements. Is that true? Yeah. So sometimes Kathryn now, since she's done all this study about marriage, and during the preparation she'd say, there's some things that we need to talk about. And so, marriage is not a peaceful pasture. It's a dynamic adventure. And you have to continue to work at it. We all believe that. So, in this retreat, we tried to make it lighthearted in a certain way, and yet also cover things that were serious. And we had feedback from people that it was helpful to them. And I think anytime people get away and aside, they think about things in a different way. So one thing that we did, and the church helped to purchase these devotional books that we took for all the couples. So everyone got a copy of that. Also a book that we used a lot in preparation, 7 Principles of Marriage.
Successful.
Oh, for successful, yeah, by John Gottman. And if you know anything about John Gottman, he's done a lot of wonderful things in his Institute on Marriage. And so we found that book was published in Polish, and so every couple got a copy of that book, and it's an excellent book. And Kathryn and I are planning to actually read the book together and use the workbook as well as a follow-up. I think Tom and Joy are planning to do the same thing, and so I would highly recommend it. And it's uncomfortable sometimes when we talk about things that we don't want to change or we don't want to be confronted with. And who likes confrontation? And yet I think for a successful marriage, you have to have that give and take. I got in trouble one time when I was in Florida pastoring, and from the pulpit I said that, people who've been married 50 years and say, we've never had a cross word, I said, I'm sorry, I just don't believe that. Well, on Monday morning, I had a 90-year-old man at my office door with his daughter who came to confront me about the fact that he and his wife had never had a crossword. She had died a few years before. So I just apologized and said, well, you know, there's always exceptions, I guess. But we understand that there are many dynamics to relationship. And I was saying to someone the other day, you know, when we get to heaven and everything is great and everybody gets along, I'm not saying it'll be boring, Lord, but, you know, there is something great about the dynamics of working things out and making up and all those kinds of things that are part of marriage. The last session, we had 4 sessions, and the first one was about the differences and God's foundation. The second one was about listening and communication, how important that is. And the third session, which Kathryn talked a lot about, was conflict, and how conflict can be an enrichment to your marriage, not a detriment. And then this last session had to do with building blocks for marriage. And we talked about the importance of covenant, all the different covenants in the Bible that were established, and how that's different than a contract. You know, that contract is a certain kind of agreement, but a covenant is more binding in a certain way because of all that goes into that commitment. And God does not break his covenants. You know, we're not to break ours as well. So we talked about the importance of that, and also prioritizing relationship with God. If your relationship with God is not very good, then certainly it's going to impact your relationship. And so it's important that when it comes to personal study and devotion and you know, being with the Lord and prayer, those things we do individually, but also as couples, you know, coming together to have devotional times together. And I think that's something that's very helpful in a marriage. So at the end of this retreat, we had some sharing. We had people who were at the retreat. We had some people that couldn't speak English. And this was supposed to be a Spanglish, an English-only retreat. So we had people who were quietly translating to their wives or to someone was with them. So we had maybe 3 or 4 people there that could not speak English or not speak it well. But they got it. And they were so appreciative. They were so glad I mean, the Outreach Foundation provided this totally free to these people that came. And that was through the donors, churches, people that have given to a cause such as this. And, you know, we came away from this feeling affirmed in what we offered. We weren't perfect in our presentation. Well, Kathryn was close to perfect. But, you know, I had some lacking, is for sure. But we really enjoyed, I think, the experience overall. And they were so grateful. But that's not the end of it. You know, the end of it is what happens now with the Novus Foundation. And Kathryn, I don't know whether you want to come speak to that. That would be great.
I mentioned how important it is to say yes when you're asked, and how that you know, one thing is for sure, that when God asks you to do something for him, he will enable you to do it. That is a certainty. I certainly had that experience with this trip. The other thing is that when you say yes, you don't know what other things God is going to do. He's going to enable you, but he's also going to do amazing things, which have already started with this Novus Foundation. We showed the picture of Annetta, who is heading it up. I was talking with Annetta yesterday about they have a plan for these 3 things that they're doing through the Novus Foundation. One is counseling, the educational component, and church planting. And when she talked about the counseling and training counselors, what she said is, when the war ends in Ukraine, there are going to be many, many, many broken families. There's going to be a lot of need for counseling. And most of the people who are going to provide this need are going to be women. They are the wives, and the sisters and the mothers who have been left behind while the men were fighting the war. So when it's over, there's going to be a tremendous need, and we want to train Christian counselors who are going to be there to not only meet the emotional and psychological needs, but to be able to witness to what God can do in our lives. So I think that's a tremendous thing that's happening. The second thing she said is the educational program. They want to provide, and they're working towards this, to provide theological training for people in various different professions. And what she asked for and what they've been praying for is people. You would think if you were starting up a school that is designed to be self-supporting in 5 years that you would be asking for money. But they are not. They are asking for people. So I would ask you to also, in your prayers, pray for people to come to this ministry in Poland, to Annetta and Pablo, as they begin this ministry. There are 250,000 students in Warsaw from all over the world. From all over the world, international students. 250,000. There's 61 or 62 colleges. So in this ministry, we don't have to go to the world is coming to us. So it's a tremendous opportunity to witness in this environment. So she prayed for people. And so while we were in Poland, I think 3 different people came forward. Was it 3? 2 or 3? Look at me like you don't remember. Remember the couple in the couple who were church planting?
Oh, yes.
Yes. Just in the space of time that we were in Poland, there were 3 different groups who were identified, who will be resources and people that they can work with. When we came back and talked with our Sunday school class on Sunday, there were 2 people who jumped up after class and said, we want to be involved, we want to do this. So they are talking with Annetta about teaching, because Annetta needs highly qualified people who are able to teach for a few years until the school becomes self-sufficient. And these are people from our congregation who are very well qualified, PhDs, love the Lord, and are more than happy to contribute their time to this endeavor. So you just don't know what's going to happen. It's just so exciting.
I was just going to add, the fact that the Novus Foundation is no longer kind of associated with the particular college that they had. They were looking for a place to land to partner in some way. And guess where they ended up? At a Baptist seminary in Poland. And that was very interesting because there's this beautiful campus that was built back in the 90s. They don't have I don't think any or many students at all now. And so they were really excited about the Novus Foundation coming there, although it would be distinct, but still that, and their whole, the word that they kept saying was synergy, which is a good word. And it's a word that is expansive and embracing other people. And, that's a cool thing. So many times we live in our silos, whether it's a Presbyterian silo or a Baptist silo or a Pentecostal silo. And that silo is what really caused conflict for this group. Their idea is to be more embracing of others to come in. We were excited to have Sandy Porter come from St. Luke's, and she did the prayer. She did the prayer times and led the prayers, and that was wonderful. And Bob led the devotionals for each session, and everyone had a part to play in this time together. So it was a group effort, and I think you were with us, weren't you? God was with us, and that's the most important thing of all. And so happy to answer any questions you might have, or if you don't have any, that's fine. Yes, sir.
Are you talking about the lecture in the marriage seminar or the school?
No, I'm talking about the college.
The school, yeah. First of all, the interesting thing is that this is probably going to be e-education, it's not going to require a person to go and physically be in the class, in a classroom setting. These students do most of their learning on internet-based processes and materials, and there's a whole world of internet-based educational resources that I don't know anything about, but other people do. And so the courses are courses in psychology, there are courses in management, courses in international relations. Annetta is sending me the curriculum, so I'll have a little bit more of an idea, but various different counseling topics is what they're looking at.
And I would imagine that they'll have some Christian training as part of that
Yeah,
as well.
there is theological training for people who are ready to plant churches, who are ready to lead congregations, that kind of thing. So.
Tom, do you have anything to add to that, or?
It just mentioned that they are intentionally English.
Yes.
Yeah, English speaking.
Yeah.
They want English lecturers, and it is accredited. So
Yeah.
it has EU accreditation through the Baptist Seminary.
You heard that, it's accredited, so that's good to know. Bob, did you have a question?
Yeah, I do. We have just finished Pentecostal Sunday.
Right.
And in your prior, I think in Sunday school, you talked more about Pentecostals, but I'm asking the question because honestly, I have no idea what the word means. Could you give us an answer of a pastor who would describe who you were with?
Well, you know, Pentecost was a one-time event that happened in the first century when the Holy Spirit descended upon the early church in such a way that 3,000 were added in one day, and the church began to expand and grow from there. And you know, Jesus said, "I will send someone who will lead you to truth," and that was the Holy Spirit. And so if you think about that, the Holy Spirit was no longer like contained with Jesus, but everywhere in a marvelous way, and is today. Pentecostals are, there's a denomination that I would say is more involved in emphasizing the gifts of the Spirit. Things like prophesying and speaking in tongues and those kinds of things. So that's a denomination, but Pentecost is an event in the church that we all celebrate because it was coming.
Are we Pentecostals?
Yes, in that sense we are.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, we may not be happy clappy here, but by the same token, I think that we are full of the Spirit, and that means that the Spirit is working in and through us. And that's the beauty. You know, God's not limited to denominations.
But that is an issue in Poland, just like it's an issue here to some extent, is that Larry mentioned there's silos. So they're denominations, and they're very protective of their denomination. They're very protective of their control, and want everyone to sort of think the way that they think, not open to various different forms of faith and practice. So that was, we mentioned the conflict, that's what it has to do with. But the Novus Foundation is intentionally interdenominational. They are wanting to be an interdenominational place where people could come without these requirements that they have a certain doctrine that they subscribe to.
And I would say some of you may have more interest in speaking further, finding out if you could be involved in a teaching capacity, or maybe go on a mission trip sometime. And yes, are you ready to go? Yes. Yes. Okay, Donna, that'd be great. Any other questions? Well, Tom, if you'd like to maybe just give a summary statement and lead us in prayer for our lunch. I will tell you this, we have, I have like 40 other slides on the thing, but it's just it's going to rotate during lunch. And we visited some cool places. We went to a salt mine, and that was cool because it was like full of art that was carved out of salt, and there's some pictures of that. And we went to Auschwitz and Birkenau, the death camps. That was a very sobering experience that we had as a group. And what else did we do? We ate in a Jewish restaurant called Esther as a group, and that was lots of fun. And we all stood and sang Sunrise, Sunset with the band that was there. That was kind of cool.
Well, and we have a book over on the piano. There's a book that was a gift about Poland, and some of their painted eggs and some of their ceramics.
Yeah. So anyway, you don't have to pay that much attention to the slides, but they'll be happening.
Larry and Kathryn, thank you. Just stellar work, and yeah, thank you. One of the things I want to just kind of, there was a great question about kind of that I think at the base of it is what's the curriculum that Novus Foundation is working. One of the reasons that the Outreach Foundation is looking at this as a full partner, this foundation as a full partner, and that meeting happens in June, is that they have been doing the educational piece now for about 7 or 8 years. And so they've got it down. They know what they're doing. The issue was the Pentecostal seminary the bishop of the Pentecostal church in Poland acted like a Pentecostal. Here's what I mean by that. The seminary under Dr. Novak's leadership and Annetta was very kingdom focused. That's the Outreach Foundation. We're not Presbyterian, we are kingdom. If you have a kingdom approach, we want you to be with us, right? We're not going to ask denominational questions. We're not going to just be sectarian. In that part of the world, it's like 10 times what you experience here. They are about putting a fence around their own camp. And the bishop decided last year that it was time for the College of Theology and Social Sciences to start focusing only on Pentecostal students. Well, and that's fine, they can do that, but that is not Dr. Novak's nor Annetta's vision. Annetta isn't even Pentecostal. She's interdenominational. She goes to an international church. And Dr. Novak, like I said, 2 times visiting the Pope, he's not just about Pentecostals. He's Pentecostal himself, but he wants a kingdom approach. So Novus Foundation, which had already started this counseling center at that college, decided it's time for us, God is telling us to do our own thing. And so rather than fight, which many people start doing, they said, fine, we're going to bless you, we're going to want you all to do that, but we're going to do the kingdom focus. So they have this wealth of experience as educators already, and they just simply needed to find a new home through which they could offer an accredited program, and that was the Baptist Seminary, which has a more kingdom orientation to it. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, so it's much like Beeson Seminary and within Sanford. Now, some of the courses that they're offering the first year are New and Old Testament theology, biblical introductions, dogmatics, which is basically church theology, hermeneutics, which just means preaching, homiletics, that's preaching. Hermeneutics is more of the way you approach it. Apologetics, which is a defense, how do you defend your faith, which in that part of the world is very important. Christian leadership for the future, global missions, church planning, evangelism, discipleship, history and theology, history of evangelicalism, Baptist theology, Presbyterian distinctives, Reformed church, polity. These are the things that they're going to be teaching at the undergraduate level. And it's undergraduate because that's all you need over there. You don't need the master's level stuff. Okay, does that help understand? So a well-trained Presbyterian elder, guess what? You can teach about Presbyterianism. You know more than most other people do. When push comes to shove, you know more. If you are a good Presbyterian elder, you can do this. It's seeped into your blood. It's just part of who you are. You don't need the expert. They aren't after the expert. They just, in fact, most of the students, they want to know what works. They don't want it just for their head. They want to know, how does this work in my life? How does it work? You know, if you're a clerk, who's been a clerk of session here? Anyone here? Clerk of session? Okay, but we know what they are. Okay, they're gifted at process. And they know how to run a meeting. Guess what they need? Same stuff we're teaching in Pakistan. We need people who know how to organize a meeting and show pastors how to do that. So that's the kind of stuff they're after, okay? It's not advanced science stuff. So it's wide open. And if you're interested in this, the Outreach Foundation certainly is. We are beginning to encourage churches to really get behind one or two things as a mission. To say, is this something that our church can get behind for the long haul? This is one that makes sense to me, Sam, for South Highland. As you think about the gifts and the people that you have and the opportunities here and the history of mission that you have, I think this one makes sense. When I saw what's going on here with Larry and Kathryn, it did make sense to me. So I'd love to have that conversation with you all. What might be some next steps that South Highland as a church can make, as a session? What are some things that you can do as you look for a new pastor? What can you do now? You don't have to wait. Please don't wait for the new pastor. Introduce that person to what you're excited about. Make that part of your discernment. Don't wait. So anyway, that's just some afterthoughts, and let me pray. Lord, thanks for this time. Thank you for the rich history that's gathered in this room, the attentive ears, the watchful eyes, and thank you for the stories that you've gathered here. Thank you that Kathryn, despite her feelings of inadequacy, you raised her up and you equipped her in exactly the right way to do what exactly you needed to have done. And I pray that you would make that a reality for everybody here, and that you would call people up to service, to join your mission that is going on here in Birmingham, but around the world. And thank you for such an accessible place such as Poland, Warsaw, Poland, so easy to get to. And that there is an immense need for the type of people and the type of church that South Highland is. Pray your blessing on the food that we're about to eat in our fellowship. In your name, amen.
Amen. All right. Any instructions, Joe? Oh, okay.
How about some jokes, Larry?
I'll mention something.
Yeah, sure. Please.
So never give a preacher a microphone. But I just thought it was fascinating that last night in the session meeting, we're trying to prepare for whoever is the next pastor, that kind of thing. And one of the things I'm trying to work with the session on is say, if we were to have a spirit-led change leader that was called as pastor. Not every pastor is a change leader, but I always pray, I'm always biased. I always say, Lord, I hope you'll send a spirit-empowered change leader to whatever church this is, because we're in a time of great change, and God needs spiritual change leaders. And so I was trying to get the session ready, and one of the things I said, one of the biggest shifts in church is away from congregational focus and leadership to a more apostolic picture of what is our church's partnership and our role with all the other bodies of Christ in the area. How can we play our God-given, God-called part in strengthening the witness of the church as a whole for the blessing of the community as a whole? And I was just so beautiful hearing you guys talking about the apostolic vision of this Novus Foundation to really reach out, empower, and equip. Boy, the sad history of Western missions is we've exported our little silos and church battles all over the world. So we got people 3 generations out that are fighting battles that started here 200 years ago, and they don't even know what they are, but they're spending half of their energy trying to protect those silos. So thanks be to God for Outreach Foundation and for groups like the Novus Foundation that are calling all people back into a more apostolic commitment to be part of God's overall work in the world. Thanks be to God. And your session was just talking about a different part of this last night.
And Sam, one of the things that I would, if you're still here, you're awesome. But I always tell any transitional pastor, I'm sure the church loves you, but they want you out of here.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if you're here in September, Annetta is here. We're arranging a visit, much like you had with Dr. Rusin. Remember how amazing that was. Annetta and her husband Pablo are going to be here, and Larry and Kathryn are hosting them at their house. So wouldn't it be wonderful to have a couple of events with session, with maybe a Wednesday night fellowship? I don't know, are you still doing those?
Yeah, not every week, but
not every week, but to
them.
have some kind of event with them, and then you can hear from Annetta and Pablo themselves about the vision, about the church planning, about their experiences. I think it would be amazing. So I just would offer that up.
And answering the thing about the interim pastor, I tell churches, I love your line, thank you for that, don't wait. I say, the reason I come in as an interim is to tell churches, don't wait to be the church. As a matter of fact, this is the best time to be the church, because 98% of whatever's happening in the church is among the people. So don't wait, do that. And as an interim pastor, I guarantee my job is not just to help you survive for the next 2 months. It's to help you plan, or 3 months, 5 months, whatever it is. It's to help you plan beyond. And so I don't care when we get an announcement there's a new pastor. We should have already planned for what's going to be happening in the fall and beyond. Yeah, here, Bob.
I would like to just say a word. I'm very emotional about it, but I want to share with you that after Sam's sermon, I spoke to him, and we were going to meet this week, in which I said, Sam, I have a flamethrower, and I know that this is something that's happened that I'd like to be part of. So, and I would love to teach over there, and I can tell you that as you have said that before, I couldn't imagine myself doing what you've done. I was so impressed but I taught as the dean of the Sanford Business School. My course was servant leadership. It wasn't mentioned there, but and I saw miracles happen. And so I volunteer as the interim leader of the movement that you're trying to start. And on Sunday evening, Stan and I spoke to him, and I told him, there's a book that you've got to read, and academics talk in books. You know, oh, I've read a great book, and nobody's want to read 500 pages to understand what he's saying. And I said to Stan, there's a great book that I really recommend. And Stan went home and saw the book, and his wife ordered it, and he told me that this morning when we had breakfast in a small group. And I said, Stan, I went home and ordered 100 of them. Because it's a book that was the first step that led me to Christ. And it was called In His Steps. And if you haven't seen it or heard it or understand it, it's exactly what Sam is asking our church to do. It's a preview. So I'm offering the entire church membership a book on servant leadership as at least explaining what I would like to do to lead a revolution. Thank you.
All right. Well, hey, revival can happen here, right, today. Thank you. God's working, and that's awesome. So I don't know if Joe is about ready, but we're going to start this circular slideshow, and you can enjoy it during dinner, lunch. So thank you for being here, and listen, thank you, Bob. Thank you for offering that, and you made me emotional. Love y'all. Let's have lunch.